We're going to go ahead and get started with our City Council legislative dinner with our City Council and our state representatives and Senator. Thank you for coming. So we're going to do just kind of work our way around the room. You can share, and so share your name, your title, and anything that you are working on or would like for us to know. And I think more for you guys to kind of share. I know you're all in special session right now.
Almost.
21st. When does it start? Thursday. Okay. So
Don't get them too excited.
don't get them too excited too bad. Okay. So I am Mayor Pro Tem Susie Valgo-Faring. I'm stepping in for the mayor. She's out of town this week. And we'll go that way, and then we'll end with you all.
Yeah, hi. Matthew Popkin, Longmont City Council, Ward 2.
Shakita Yarbrough, Longmont City Council at Large.
Councilwoman Diane Christ, Ward 1.
Harold Dominguez, City Manager.
Zach Artis, I'm Assistant City Manager of the Public Safety.
Sandy Suter, Assistant City Manager with Shared Services and the Council's lobbyist. I'm Becky Doyle, Chief Strategic Innovation Officer.
Christina Pacheco, Human Services Director.
Dave Hornbach, Assistant City Manager, Utilities, Public Works and Engineering.
Dan Woog, I am State Representative in House District 19, and I have a little bit of Longmont. I believe it goes west to Pace. And then I have all of Firestone, Frederick, Tacoma, Erie, and probably going to focus on public safety bills this year. Possibly cost of living, but definitely I have a strong focus on public safety and trying to decrease crime here, and especially in Denver, but the entire state. So it'll be a major focus.
Nice.
Do you have any special session bills?
Not to put you on the hot spot.
She
Sorry.
put me on the hot
Sorry.
spot. I believe I will be on a bill with another representative. I can't even fully in right now.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No,
I will be
I'm sorry.
starting it tomorrow
I'm sorry.
when I'm at the Capitol.
And I was going to ask
Thank
Sue.
you very much.
I was going to ask Sue,
Yeah.
do you want us to do special session update?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we can tag team a little bit in terms of the updates there and what we can share about our work on that. I'm Katie Wallace. I'm the state senator for Longmont, Erie, and Lafayette. We are, so I'll just start sort of from a high level of why we're heading into the special session. So HR1, the tax budget bill coming from the federal level, really tore a hole in the state's budget. So on July 1st, we had a balanced budget that we worked out in the regular session. Come July 4th and the signing of HR1, that bill was blown apart. Part of the reason for that is how Colorado's tax code is tied to the federal level, which makes it so that both our federal, the way we calculate income through federal adjusted gross income tied to the federal level, and then our tax codes, so where we are collecting taxes or not, where we're giving tax breaks, are also heavily tied to the federal level. That means immediately the change in the revenue that the state is bringing in it happens immediately given the changes in revenue being collected at the federal level. We're one of only a handful of states, I think it's 4, that collect taxes in that way and that tie our taxes to the federal level in that way. And right now we are experiencing serious harm as a result of that, right? And choices were made in HR1 to take healthcare away from folks, to make it harder to access SNAP and to cut benefits there, in exchange for a lot of corporate tax incentives. It's a lot for us to be facing. We have several tax deductions and other things that Rep. McCormick is leading on one of them, so I'll let her chime in on more of those. 2 things I wanted to talk about in particular. So I'm leading the Healthy School Meals for All ballot initiative. I co-led that this last session. That original bill made it so that we sent forward 2 ballot initiatives to the November ballot. Proposition LL will remain the same. That proposition will make it so that we can retain the funds that we collected over the taper cap originally approved by the voters for that program. It will ensure universality in that program, which makes it so that schools avoid the incredible administrative burden of trying to figure out which kids qualify. We also take away the shame that comes with having to access those lunches, and we make up for a lot of what the federal school lunch program misses in terms of where it calculates income, right? So a lot of those middle income families who are struggling to afford food and other basic necessities every single day are covered by this program because it is simply universal. Everybody gets it. So we're not leaving any kiddos out. As a result of it, we've served 600,000 meals to date, and we save families $1,300 per child per year, right? So it's immensely beneficial. Proposition LL to retain those funds is moving forward. The second initiative that we put forward in that bill is Proposition MM. That bill expands the program so that we can fully fund, we can keep it universal, and we can fully fund things like local purchasing programs, which highly benefit our local agricultural producers, as well as other businesses in the local areas, and it also provides technical grants for our schools. Part of that is, what do you do when you get 50 pounds of cantaloupe, and how do you have kids want to eat it, right? So that program as a whole is again incredibly beneficial to our students. It keeps them healthier. It keeps them, which makes them do better in school, which means that they can generate more for our societies in the long term, right? So it's something we're glad Colorado voters approved. We believe, because of other changes in HR 1, the federal tax bill, that we will collect a little bit more from that program than we need. And so part of what we're doing in special session is changing the ballot language to say, monies will first go to making sure this program remains universal and is fully funded, and then excess funds can come back to counties and the state to help administer SNAP, which has been decimated under HR 1 and is going to cause serious hunger problems in our community. So that's what I'm doing. Just the small work of keeping our children fed, both at home and at school. That's what I'll be focused on. The last thing I wanted to say before passing it over to Rep. McCormick is about healthcare. So in HR 1, we saw incredible cuts to Medicaid that are going to be also detrimental to our communities. Those will not come in until 2027, so we can address them in the regular session. What we cannot address in the regular, or wait to address, is the changes to the federal tax bill removed the premium tax credit that subsidizes health insurance on the exchange. That participation from those folks stabilizes our exchange and makes it so that folks are healthier and have access to insurance. As a result of that tax credit being removed, in Boulder County alone, premiums are going to go up 106% on average starting in October. So we have a bill, Rep. McCormick will speak further to it, to try to address that currently, right? And it's going to be long-term fixes, because once again, our people are being left out in the cold as a result of HR 1. I know I said I would wrap up. I do just want to say one last thing. I toured with Boulder County. I toured, and I know Harold, you oversee the housing developments here that support folks in Longmont with subsidized housing. So I toured Xenia. I toured all of your housing developments. They're wonderful, and they're providing incredible things for folks in need in our community. I also looked a constituent in the face who told me that as a result of HR 1, he would be kicked out of his supporter housing. And I think one of the most impactful things that he said to me was that this could be any one of us, right? He was a dean, an arts dean at a university in Denver prior to this, and then because of a physical and mental health injuries, he ended up living in a van and then homeless. The only stability he got was through his housing voucher. He wrote a poem, I'm happy to share it with you all, about the safety that he feels as a result of this. That's what's being torn away in HR 1. And that's what I'm hearing from constituents every day who are fearful, and we're going to see homelessness, increased crime, other things as a result of this. And so I just can't emphasize enough to you all how much we have to address in the special session and all the things that are about to come down the pike. And so I just wanted to share that because that's your constituent too. It's someone that you all are working incredibly hard to keep housed, to keep stable, and he deserves it, and so do the rest of our constituents.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I'm Karen McCormick, and I'm the state representative for District 11, which is most of Longmont, the part east of Pace. And I just wanted,
West.
sorry,
Yeah.
west, east, west, north, south. I guess I've been standing on my head all day. That one thing that Senator Wallace kind of alluded to is that all of these things are in the ecosystem of people and trying to support people in our state without having some kind of domino effect that affects all the other systems, and that's what's important to remember. And what has happened on July 4th is the impact to our current budget, and that's why we have to go back right now. We have a constitutional requirement here in the state of Colorado to have a balanced budget. And as of July 4th, we do not have a balanced budget for this fiscal year. And that's the urgency of going back to fix this right now. With all of the places, and I even brought the governor's call here with me because I wanted you to understand all the different pieces that we have to address this week, even with all the nooks and crannies that we had to look into last year for our $1.2 billion shortfall. There's very little change in the couch cushions left because we did that hard work last year. So we're in a much more difficult position this year. And luckily, over the past 14 years, the General Assembly has done a really good job of recognizing a need for a stronger reserve in our coffers. And it typically used to be around 4%. And we have made it a point to bring that up to a 15% reserve. And that's important because even a 15% reserve will not get us through a severe recession. And they're already predicting a 50% likelihood of a recession in the coming year. So that's a problem. And that we may need to even get up to an 18% reserve to weather what might come in the next 2 years. And these are from two different forecasting centers that have come up with those numbers. So we are looking at, we were tasked with 7 different things from the governor to look at the fiscal impact of HR 1 to our budget and how to address part of that. We will need to dip into our reserve because with all the things that we have been able to come up with, we're still going to be short. There was going to be a Tabor refund this coming next year. That's gone because of HR 1 as well. So that excess now helps us with that $1.2 billion hole because it's not an excess anymore. So basically we have to look at different parts of statute regarding revenue shortfalls and the insufficient revenue. We're going to look at the ability for the state to sell future tax credits to insurance companies, and I think even some corporate entities that have a tax burden in the future, that they could be able to prepay that tax burden now because we need the money now and receive a credit in the future, which kind of helps them, it helps us. So we're looking at a bill that will do that. We are going to look at a piece of legislation that will decouple some of the qualified business income deduction that we have, that we've already done in the past. And so we're going to look at extending that piece of legislation. I have the bills written down. We did one in 2022, I think. So that is going to be extended into the future. We're looking at adjustments and reductions to the home office and regional home office rate reduction. This was a piece of an incentive that was supposed to incentivize large companies to keep 2.5% of their workforce here in our state. We have looked back over the years to realize that that actually isn't working as intended. And that reduction that they were able to take off the 2% fee that they pay down to 1%, because it's not working, we're looking at actually just not having that 50% deduction there. And then we're looking at expanding some of the foreign listed jurisdictions that are allowed to not pay state taxes when they have a large part of their business out of the country. So we're going to look at adding some of those countries back into where they need to be considering paying Colorado state taxes. And all of these have about like a $70 to $100 million, I'm just giving you a ballpark, impact to our revenue to help us. There will be, I'm carrying this bill, an adjustment to the sales tax vendor fee here in our state. We're one, there's quite a few states, 20 plus states in the nation that don't have this at all. And this is something that I was able to take advantage of as a small business owner over the years, where if you're a business owner and you're collecting sales and use tax, or collecting sales tax and figuring out your use tax and then remitting that to the state, you were allowed to keep a small portion of that 2.9% Colorado state tax. It was 3.3% of the 2.9. Now it's 4% of the 2.9. And it was put into place in 1935, back when you had to figure this out with a pencil and you didn't even have a calculator. I had to do it with a calculator and a written form. We have really upgraded our systems. There are great accounting software and inventory management tools that businesses have. And I've spoken to several small businesses and medium-sized businesses that this really, at this point in time, does not take a lot of their time. One over $2 million business I talked to said it takes their bookkeeper about 20 minutes a month. And the fact that the average vendor discount fee is about $80 per filing period, this is not a large amount of money per business that will make or break that business. But when you accumulate all that together, again, there's another $60 to $75 million that's missing from the state, and this won't affect local sales and use tax, at the city or county level. The last one, is this concerning decoupling. I can't really explain this one. Through an add back of the federal foreign derived intangible income deduction. Don't ask me about that one. I'm not a tax expert. The governor's call had two issues to address through the healthcare space to make sure that access to services delivered by providers that are now banned through HR 1 that cannot receive federal Medicaid funding, that somehow we're going to be able to ensure availability of those Medicaid services to the eligible individuals. So that's something we're addressing. Also, ways to help our health insurance affordability enterprise, our reinsurance program, to make sure that these increases in premium that were already predicted by our Department of Insurance. They were predicting, I think, a 28% increase across the board statewide. This was before HR 1. Up to 38% on the western slope. And without the subsidy that people that pay for insurance that are working, without that, many of those folks are going to just drop their health insurance. And that, again, has a trickle effect on our healthcare systems, our safety net systems, all of the above. So whatever we can do to try to prevent some of that health insurance coverage loss for individuals is what we're in the individual market and on Connect for Health Colorado. The food security issue we're supposed to address, which Senator Wallace went over with you. And then the last fun thing is artificial intelligence. It doesn't seem to fit in with any of the other things because it doesn't. But that is also in the governor's call, and we've had a lot of stakeholders meeting on that since Senate Bill 205 2 years ago to come up with a solution that will not only make some definitions more clear, but also help the developers, make sure that the developers of AI systems have more of the liability than the deployers, the people that are using it. So there's two bills, at least that I know of. Representative Wu might have more information on other bills that are coming forward in that space. So there's, as you can imagine, over the last week and a half, we have been in the weeds on this very short runway to big problems that we're doing our very, very best to solve, and knowing which ones we have to solve now versus which ones can wait for regular session. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Then I think before we go on to our agenda, if there's anyone who has questions or follow-up comments?
I know it's surprising, but I have a couple questions.
I'm sure you do.
First, have you considered asking AI how to solve the state budget crisis? Just thinking using the tools they
You
have.
know, I'm afraid I know what it would come up with.
On a more serious note, Katie, I want to ask a question about the propositions you mentioned. And this is my ignorance of the state process here. Are those, if those are passed, do those go on the ballot then for the whole state to vote on?
So they're already passed and on the ballot for the whole state to vote on.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Oh, so those are passed in the regular
They were
session.
passed
Yeah.
in regular.
Got it.
One is being adapted in the special session. If that bill happened to fail, it would go on anyway
Yes.
as is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so they're
It will be a
they've
state
passed.
one.
It's going to be on the ballot for this fall.
November 2020.
And that's part of the deadline. We had to get any ballot
Yep.
language change done by September 5th.
Which is why we are meeting.
Which is
part of
why
the
we're
last
meeting
session.
Got it. Oh, nice. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sandy's my BFF during session, so as these bills, quite a few of them are already posted. Many sponsors decided to post them publicly on last Saturday. So I think
Okay.
there's 20
Great.
something bills already on there. To have you as you may, what is today?
Today is the
Tuesday or Monday? What is today?
18th.
Monday, Tuesday.
It's Monday.
Yes.
So you probably won't have time for council to even weigh in, because who knows, we might be done by next Tuesday. So I just want you to know that you could go look at what's already available and just see if there's any big flags or suggestions or concerns there. And, apologize for the short time frame.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Take a look.
Of those funding strategies you mentioned, are any of them particular? Like, are you particularly passionate about one or two of them? Do you think that you're champion?
That I'm passionate about. Well, that's not a funding. Well, it is a funding one.
Were you going to say how this going on?
Yeah. The other part of the vendor fee one, I failed to mention that is important. There was a change in the vendor fee cap in 2019. I think again we did something in, I don't know what year, where it already eliminated the super high big companies that are having more than $12 million a year in sales and use tax. So the big guys are already eliminated, but what we did back for the first cap was to have some of that, what we were bringing in, before the cap versus what we could now bring in, eliminating some of that vendor fee. That difference was utilized to put in the Housing Development Grant Fund, which may be important to you. And so that was a good way for us to put that money from the sales and use tax fund kind of into this funding mechanism. We wanted to make sure if we're eliminating the vendor fee, it's not really a fee. I hate to keep calling it a fee, but that's what it's called in law.
Right.
It's not really a fee. It's a, I'm gonna take a little bit of this before I pass it on to you thing. We wanted to make sure that that housing development grant fund stays whole into the future. And so there's a second part of this bill that speaks to that, to make sure that that amount as a percentage of what it started as remains. So when you see that, that's what that's all about. Anyone else?
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started with the topics to be discussed, and the first one on our agenda is the regulation of recovery houses and sex offender regulations. And I don't know who's going to start this off. Who put it on the agenda?
Sorry,
Was that you? Sorry.
Giant bite.
You know, Senator Wallace and I did not put that.
Yeah.
Yes, neither did Zach.
Okay, all right.
Councilmember Popkin did, however, because I think we wanted to talk a little bit about what legislative solutions might be in the next session. So right now for the special session, but would that be accurate?
Yeah, and in concert with Councilman Chris as well.
Chris agreed.
Yeah, both tag team that one. So maybe we can start on the legislative side. And also just on the legislative topic, I'll pass it over to Councilman Chris if she has questions there. What? Obviously, you're all aware of kind of the situation where we've been dealing with.
I don't know what Representative Wook is.
Can you give me a quick?
No.
Not really.
I mean,
Well, then just.
to be fair, I don't know if he does.
That's fair.
We did send the timeline and summary to everybody,
Okay.
but it's a pretty hefty document, which kudos.
And thank you,
to
Chief
Chief
Artis,
Artis
for
for
that.
putting that through.
That was big work.
I'm gonna try to give a quick.
I may.
Yeah, give us
I
a
may know actually.
synopsis.
Okay.
Just go ahead. I think I actually am filled in on this.
Well, we'll start with the legislative question, and then maybe through osmosis we can get to some more of the situation there. So I'd be curious. I don't know if there's anything being considered in special session right now, but one would be curious to know if an update or an amendment to relevant Colorado laws that have enabled this situation to happen are being considered. And then looking ahead to the next session, like what options are on the table, what have, particularly from your experience, like what have you seen, how have you seen like legislation update state agency processes that clearly have had some holes, if not flaws, in them to kind of correct that. So I guess start with that and then we can kind of unpack the situation further.
The special session has a clause in it that limits what we can.
Yeah, what I went through, we
That's
can't,
it.
we can't color outside the lines.
Okay.
So it's really for the next regular
And
session.
the next
Yes.
Regular session.
So the fully defining the issue is part of where I think we still are in a way, that we have people that have gone through the criminal justice side of things that are under the sex offender management board. They're in that side, and then we have the recovery residents oversight and implementation that's on the behavioral health administration side. And so as I was getting information on what happened in North Glen too, to try to understand how these two people that fall into both categories are kind of tangled up in this overlap or this meshing of that. So just recently, as you've seen from the emails, knowing that there was an effort to at least address some of this last session, that honestly, the rest of us had no idea, because if a bill doesn't get introduced and people are working on it, the rest of us may have no idea what those conversations were, what proposal there was, what the definition of the problem they were trying to fix in that particular situation, which is why we reached out as best we could to colleagues to find out, is anybody working on this? Were they in the past? If so, is it coming forward? And that was the most recent information that I shared with you all, is that last year it was Representative Bird and I can't remember who, that were working on this, and apparently there was some issues with the governor's office, and I apologize, I can't tell you what those issues are, but we are still trying to find that out. And I think your CML contacts might be able to share more light on what obstacles they ran up against. But aside from that, I think we're still dealing with this issue of the Behavioral Health Administration's having an agency that then looks after recovery residents through CAR. And since CAR is not a state agency, we get into these problems of how do we get information from them, and then how do we hold the Behavioral Health Administration accountable for any missteps or miscommunications or not following their own rules. And part of that may or may not be through, it is partly through the state legislature, where we keep hammering them and asking questions. We have the SMART Act hearings that come in January and February, which stands for State Measurable Accountability and something R reporting. Those are sometimes almost like inquisitions when we have a particular issue that needs sunlight on it. And so throughout this summer, I've been collecting some of the things that I want to bring forth during the SMART Act, because BHA is under the Health Committee in the Senate and the House. I'm on the Health Committee in the House. So I will have that opportunity to at least keep going for it. I think we're both still waiting. I'm waiting for a specific answer from the Attorney General's office about who has kind of enforcement capacity for state agencies to follow their own rules and regulations, but also to follow state law. So I can't answer that specifically. We don't have the ability to fine BHA or
unless you would like it entirely eliminated, and our second agenda item, I believe, is about mental health funding, right, which is predominantly what BHA does. So unless you want them to not exist, we don't. That's the oversight.
Right.
Yeah, we can pass new laws. We can amend laws. That takes really defining what exactly it is we want to amend, building a coalition of support for that particular change in law.
And doing because I think some of the problem here, right, is the state level coming in and telling localities what to do, right? That's kind of the premise that's being sort of, that's the tension that we're trying to draw through here. And so that given, right, we'd be making another state law. Are we going to be encroaching on your local ordinances, right? Things, and I want to mention too that one of our laws that were passed, the residential recovery ones, and the removal of occupational limits didn't stop this residence from being regulated, right? You all passed an ordinance that regulated it on the basis of those folks being sex offenders, right? But that's the tension that we would have to be trying to pull through at the state level too, is we're going to be telling the whole state what to do. And so not to say that can't happen, right? Not to say that legislation can't be looked at, and that's why we're in conversation with our colleagues who are pursuing that. But that's the tension on this.
Yeah, no, and I get that. Maybe I'll just one follow-up, then I'll pass it over to Councilwoman Christ. I'm not sure there's necessarily a need for a new law. I think what we've been trying to unpack is how do we enforce the existing process and the existing law? That seems to be very clear about the process that BHA was supposed to follow and when they were supposed to certify this residence. And so we can get into those facts if it's helpful, but I'm not inherently asking for a new law if it's not necessary to just enforce what's already on the books.
There's also, this is something I haven't explored yet, but occurred to me over the last week or so, is there are ways to go through the legislative audit committee to ask for a specific audit process of a state agency. I'm not on that committee, but that is something that we can find out their ability to dive deeper through an official audit of the agency, which might get to some of those questions that you're asking.
Because their whole goal is interpretation of the law, right, that we've set down. How is the law being interpreted and implemented by the state agencies? And they do a whole load of work in that, right? But that's part of what their system is set up to do, is how is this being implemented and why, and is this being interpreted as the state legislature set out?
And then they have a whole report that that gives them certain dates to fix things or set up different procedures so that whatever they found in violation of their audit does not happen again. So they do those sorts of things too. So this could be an avenue to go.
I'll just say too, just in a quick addition, that the SMART Act hearings, all of us can waive ourselves onto there, right? So though Rep. McCormick has a permanent place on the health committee, I can waive onto there too, and we can kind of tag team this. In addition to a lot of questions that I have with BAHA in particular, certainly in terms of this, right? Which, I might just underscore that too, right? We have been engaging. We brought BHA here, right? We've been engaging throughout, and we have no intention of leaving the conversation, which is the key oversight that we can provide, of insisting that these questions be answered, that we clarify why the law was interpreted how it was, and when their kind of oversight of this would have come into play, which are questions that we have out to them. They're working with partner agencies, including the 20th Judicial District, who made the choice to put these folks here, or would have worked in conjunction with the folks putting themselves here, in terms of where they were housed, right? So there's a lot of layers here of government and bureaucracy. I understand that's hard to navigate. We're committed to staying in those conversations and ensuring that folks have those answers, whether that be in the SMART Act hearing in January or right now. And it's certainly, we've not let up. We've asked for those answers from BHA, and we'll continue to do so.
Can I ask another question that more on the legislative side of that?
Yes, of course.
So it seems like there are two bills that created this situation, right? The one around, removing the restrictions for people to be related in housing, and then the sober living facilities basically being exempt from local zoning laws. Any appetite for just fixing one of those?
Well, I have a follow-up question. I think, first I'll answer the first one about occupancy limits. I think there was such a statewide push on that for seniors, for students, for all kinds of people that are dealing with the cost of housing, to be able to have unrelated people. When I'm 80, I might need 6 roommates to pay for my,
Yeah.
So there was such a drive for that I don't think there's an appetite to undo that because of the need.
Although I'll just toss in really quick that didn't seem to be a barrier to the ordinance that was passed, right? So I might challenge a little bit just the premise that that state law created the problem, right? It didn't create a problem to the intervention for you all. You all were still able to make that intervention based on public health and safety, right? So thank you for that work.
Yes.
And look at that, the state law didn't get in your way.
My follow-up question back is my understanding of the recovery homes, recovery residents being, and I might have this wrong because I remember with Chief Artist, we had a phone call about this, that folks in recovery with substance use disorders, if they're not on any substances, that they fall under the protections of the ADA, and that applies to employment and housing and all kinds of services that they are able to access. And so having discriminations in housing about where those recovery homes can be, I wasn't involved with that bill, but it seems like that bill was in response to those folks now having somewhat of a protected status under the ADA if they follow, they're not using. So do I have that interpretation right? So so undoing that could run afoul of ADA law.
Yeah. And I do think the Colorado Municipal League, so I did a little checking and Zach and I looked at what they were talking about presenting. The way that Colorado Municipal League works is they put a call out to all cities to say, what would you like for CML to sponsor? Cities then give suggestions. The CML board decides what they're going to sponsor for that year. So it's not like the board just decides themselves. It's an all call for
Does
cities.
Longmont have an outsized vote on that?
No.
Okay.
Same vote as all the other cities, yeah. But the city of North Glen is the one that has asked now this next legislative session to put forth, and I think it's just regulating sex offenders though, right?
No.
Giving the localities the
Well, no,
ability to regulate sex
is it,
offenders.
or is it the regulation?
No, so I have the language here.
You have a what?
I have the language here.
This is
Oh.
for the next session.
Great.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify a couple of things.
Yes,
So I think we're mixing two issues here.
yes.
Senator Wallace, what you're talking about is we were able to regulate the number of sex offenders that can live in any residence within the city limits.
Right.
Has nothing to do with recovery homes. What I think,
But it does apply to this particular case and
it
this
does, but I
particular
think we're talking about recovery homes in
It does,
general because
yeah.
we have additional recovery homes. What,
But this is the predominant one that we're talking about and that we've been asked to address.
right, but I think what we're talking about is holistically about recovery homes is general, right? I understand we're talking about this one, we were able to limit.
Okay, I wish we had separated out the agenda points then
Mhm.
to say recovery homes and sex offenders rather than lumping them.
Okay, I think.
But I'm sorry for interrupting. It's a good point.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we're talking about them as one, and they're
Yeah,
not.
but they're not. And so again, my document that you got tried to lay that out, that there was multiple issues with it. You are correct. The city of Longmont created an ordinance that limit the number of sex offenders can live in a recovery home or any other type of residential structure we have here. What I think that one of the questions what Sandy was trying to get to, and maybe I'm incorrect, is because the change in the relationship of individuals, we as a city, based on our zoning, used to be able to restrict the number of unfamiliar people in. So while residents or recovery residents are allowed, based on some changes, in residential areas, we could have limited the number of people there. Meaning you could only have, let's just say, 5 versus 10, 15, or 20, based on the number of recovery. So I think one of the questions is potentially next legislative session, is there consideration, or is there potential conversation to take place about allowing cities to limit the number of familiar folks again, because we got rid of that piece, right? So in this case, we were able to limit the number based on sex offenders that live in this recovery home.
Mm-hmm.
Other recovery homes, we don't have that ability. And so I think that becomes the question is there an appetite, is there a conversation that might be able to take place where we restrict the number of individuals that are not familiar living back within residences again?
Okay, that's really good. Thank you for clarifying that. And
Yeah.
because that bill, I haven't seen the CML bill language, but because it is addressing recovery residences, it is that that discussion would very easily fit within the confines of that bill. And that would be something that the city of Longmont, as part of the voice of CML, should bring forward to that coalition.
Yes.
Because that is an important thing to start to discuss. And it's very relevant, and I get how it's different than me as an 80-year-old having 6 roommates.
Right.
I
It's
get,
different. Yeah.
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 There is an appetite to, I'm sure, and I'm not the bill sponsor, and I'm not, but I bet
Is that what you saw? Oh, are you the bill sponsor of
No,
this one? Oh,
I'm just saying I have an appetite for that, so we can talk.
I just think you have the bill language this is what the bill language says. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I have it. So if you looked on my timeline, I just did a synopsis for August 13th of what that says. And basically what it was is
Like page 42 or something.
yeah.
It was
So it
pretty-
requires
I've got it.
so what the bill would require is that anyone the placement of a registered sex offender by the Colorado Department of Human Services at a mental health transition living facility, which is not what we're talking about,
Right.
be located at least 1,000 feet from the school. So it's not the same thing as a recovery home. And so one of the things I want to point out is, I know you talked about the 20 judicial probation and parole. These individuals weren't physically placed there by probation or parole. They were offered as an alternative for living, meaning that if you're looking for somewhere to live, these individuals, because there are some other individuals that offer housing to sex offenders, you can move into and live. And so I just want to make sure that we're clear that they're not being forced to live here. This
Yeah.
is an
Right.
option. Now, if they could find somewhere
But
else to live, they
their
could.
housing does have to be approved by those folks, right? They have to clear it.
Yeah.
They're charged with finding it. They're not
So-
being placed
so-
somewhere.
Yeah, they are 1/3 of the treatment team, and probation does need to approve.
Right, but the 20 judicial is not going, Zach, you have to live here.
Right.
Yeah.
But they are
No.
consulting with them in it
They
and then
do.
approving
Ultimately
the place. Yeah, they are an ultimate approving.
I should also say that, I saw all those bills come through and individually, they sounded like a great idea.
Yeah.
The council never
Yeah.
opposed either
Yeah.
of those bills.
Exactly.
Because it is the combination of things that has created the situation.
I think that's what I was going to say. Is we have our ordinances that have us in that regulatory mode. What happens is this breaks a piece, this breaks a piece, this breaks a piece, and then our ordinances don't function because what you don't have is that mechanism to catch some of these things as they're coming through the system. And I think that's really what we're saying in this is it was two in particular that really then broke our local ordinances because things then could weave through the cracks. And I think behind all of this, what we're talking about is there's also a point where things weaving through the cracks actually creates life safety issues. Because when we talk about, and I'm going to use the word, and there's so many words for this, but when we have multiple people living in a home, the question is, how many's too many? How is a home designed for that? Do they need fire in residential sprinkler systems? Does our fire department know how many people are in the house? That in the event, in a situation, it actually starts creating life safety issues because we're not aware of actually what's happening. And some will say, well, is that different than, a family in a home? Part of what then triggered this was it came into a building permit review that was unclear. Didn't say this was what was going to happen. It just said, here's a bedroom. And because of this, I think they were like, well, we can do it. We're not telling you. It creates a completely different issue that we're now trying to reconcile.
It's one thing of a family of 7 or 8. It's another thing with 8 people who are unrelated and in their own.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of pieces in this, and I think this is generally, I think what we found is it's kind of municipalities have their system set, and there may be just something that breaks it that actually creates challenges for us, of which people take advantage of on a regular basis. We're constantly dealing with this through planning and building inspection. I mean, people don't even get their normal building permits when they add something, and so that's I think what they're talking about is, and I think it would be because there are ADA issues that we have to follow in this, but just something that allows the congregate living to go through the city system so that there are some checks and balances in that process.
Well, in their language, in their proposed bill, just to be clear in definitions, are mental health transitional living facilities the same as recovery residences, or they fall into the same category?
So the language for the bill that was drafted by the two representatives in CML doesn't clarify that. So there is no defined definition of what they're calling it.
Okay, so there's
And
an opportunity for clarification.
Yeah. And we're going to
Honestly, that's what we need to clarify is
Yeah.
where are we and what are we?
Yeah,
Because when you have sex offenders, that should be the primary rather than recovery. And I'll say why, because we had this discussion in July 12th, is why are we giving them a diagnosis and then they're on a registry, so now everybody knows about that diagnosis. And diagnoses are supposed to be private. So we're mixing apples and oranges to the non-benefit of the residents there, the non-benefit of the city's processes. And really, if you are on the sex offender registry, that should be primary. And everything else, even if you're in recovery, should be kept secret and private and not conflated with that ordinance and that living situation.
Back to this bill though, Harold, I do think that there's opportunity here to not only clarify what we're talking about, but also to bring in this piece of a suggestion and see what the other cities think about that. That this is, you're suggesting potentially a carve out for certain types of homes that won't affect kind of the original impetus behind the raising
original
the
bills.
cap. If, students and old people. I think that's it. From what I can tell, it would fit, and it's worth having that discussion to see.
We are going to
if you
meet
could-
with.
You would need the coalition to get behind it.
We're going to meet with CML after this dinner and
Tonight?
No.
We're not done yet.
Probably not quite.
No.
But Councilmember Popkin is our representative on the CML policy committee, so
Oh.
we'll include him on anything that we talk about because this is Northglen's
I understand.
proposal, but
Yeah.
we would like to jump in there and make some suggestions.
Well,
so
and
we
that's
don't-
how coalitions build, and that's how amendments get added, is the more people that are aware of the discussion and the particulars of their community, the better a particular bill can get, so.
And the further it can get to,
Yes.
right? Because it sounded like last time this kind of came to a brick wall before it even really got going. And so happy to,
And we don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
but perhaps we can bring a bit of a different coalition behind that.
Thank you. I
A
appreciate
better
that
awareness of
consideration.
what it's like in the field in municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, this is very helpful.
Yeah, and we can stay in touch on the CML piece. I wanted to wrap up with one more question, unless you were still going.
Well, I'd like to hear what your next topic
I
is,
was
because I
gonna
may have
say,
more
I
to say about that.
I don't think she had much of a chance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Right,
didn't
no,
have
no,
much
so,
mention.
so please. You jumped in before, so I wanted to be.
Okay, so you think the CML legislation is the way to clarify all this?
It is the perfect opportunity because it's already rolling down the tracks. And,
But how long does that type of legislation take? Like,
Well,
we have to go
average
into
bill-
regular session, right, which is at the beginning of the year,
regular, how long does it take?
yeah.
It depends on the
Depends on
bill,
the bill,
depends on if it'll have any, it shouldn't have any fiscal impact, so that helps you.
So it might be signed in April
Oh, gosh, you
or
you
before.
want me to pull out my
Yeah,
crystal
that's
ball?
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's usually when
Yeah,
everything
well, and
went
I don't know
on
what
the
the
table.
governor's office, it's gotta have a path to a signature by the
Yes.
governor, so I don't know what the issues were last year that somehow did not even let it get introduced.
Also,
Yeah, so that would be helpful to know is
Yeah.
how do we sweeten the pot here? How do we, impress
Yeah, building.
these
the-
months of working on this? I mean, we look
Also,
at
just
Chief
to
Artist, the information he gave us, which is 8 pages long, and it's just a lot of,
Yeah.
I don't know how many times you mentioned staff, but it hurts my heart to think how much time you and your staff, and that's everyone,
same.
Harold and Sandy, have put into this
I
project,
agree.
and also with the council.
Well, sometimes bills get thought up, introduced, and signed in 3 months. Sometimes it takes 5 years. So
That seems right. That's a good span.
it takes try again. It is a messy process.
And my fear is it's going to seem like it's not urgent when actually it is. I mean, our
That's the
neighborhoods
co-
have been
that's
coming
the-
to us
yeah.
week after week saying we've got to
And that's
figure
the
this out.
coalition
Yes.
building. The more voices you have, the more people showing up to tell stories in committee, the more bipartisanship you can get. That also puts pressure up the chain. So
So out of the three of you, are you all on board with this idea?
I'm on board.
With
With the idea of bringing forth the CML legislation
I'm
to
always on
define
board
these two
with
separately
looking at a piece
recovery
of
homes from
policy,
sex
evaluating
rich.
its impact.
yes,
I
we need
never-
to look at what the bill language. We need to see the
I
bill
know,
language.
I know. We
Yeah,
need to-
but of course, absolutely, we'll always consider, especially if Longmont is on board, right? We're always happy to look at the legislation that you all are bringing and
Okay.
advocating for, and doing what we can to see it through.
Yeah, but it does seem like there's a need on both sides to clarify this.
Yes.
And
But
make
I
it
learned
more
long
workable
ago,
for-
don't say yes and don't say no.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
and
I
also
you
we should be
have to
careful
build
about
draft.
what we, as you all encountered with the ordinance that you all did too.
Yeah.
There's limits to what we can do retroactively, right? And so I want to be careful about promising this as a golden, even if we fix everything that might have created, right? We will be limited in how we can retroactively apply it.
It's for
Constitutionally speaking, yes, which is, I would argue, a good thing, because it means I can't say I don't like any of you and I'm going to make laws to say what you're doing is illegal, right? That's a good thing to have, and but we will be limited by it, so we should be careful about what we can promise for what's occurred, right?
Well, we've spent a lot of time working with BHA and CAR, and it turns out that CAR is not a state agency, so that was very frustrating. But at what point do we work with the Department of Corrections, where this maybe more falls under their arena?
Or the 20th Judicial District.
Yeah, 20th Judicial.
Because that's, let's remember, right, that even if it was working in consultation with the offenders, right, that's who approves and oversees their day-to-day lives.
Instead, and
Probation
not
parole.
BHA and not CAR.
Not at
Right, not at all.
all. Not at all.
So why are we spending so much time on that certification and that line of inquiry? You see how
And
it's really
it's
important
fair
to say it's
right.
this or it's
Yes,
that.
and this is, I think, what we were getting to in terms of wanting to separate out these things, because it sounds like there are frustrations with the ways. This is the only recovery residence that I've heard about, right? And it's very much, to me, it feels very looped in with. And I know, Zach, you've told me about others. This is directly from the constituents. This is the only recovery residence. So right now, it's coming from city staff and from this group, this community, and it's very tied in with the sex offenders that are living there, right? It's so to once again do that work of trying to pull these two things apart. It sounds like there's city frustrations about recovery residences separate from sex offenders. It also sounds, and we know for sure that the community is frustrated with where this group of sex offenders was placed. That was not a state decision. Our regulations around recovery residences and how we oversee those and how we register those have gotten pulled into it. Worth having those conversations and seeing how we can needle through what worked and what didn't in terms of local implementation. And again, it needs to be separated out from this particular house, this particular group of folks, and what it might,
We have instances of recovery homes. We have instances of people who are transitioning back from Department of Corrections. We have homes. Well, we have not had a problem with any of those to the extent this, and I think it's because of the muddied waters and the who actually oversees this and who.
You mean
who should we be
there
talking
hasn't
to
been
about the rules?
Sorry, what do you mean you haven't had a problem with any of those, and that's because of the
Well,
muddied waters?
Not that I know of. Certainly not in my ward.
But is that
We
because
had
of a
problem
lack
with
of
those
oversight of
particular-
them, or is that because there haven't been problems with them? Or maybe we don't know.
So I
Chief
think,
Artist?
so I just want to clarify. So I think where the concern becomes, again, I think the city of Longmont's taking the appropriate steps that it feels necessary to address the sex offender issue.
Yeah.
We know it's not statewide, it's based upon municipality or county. I think where the concern and the question becomes, and I think this was even raised by both of you in this conversation, is the BHA component when we talk about just a recovery house, right?
Yeah.
And the accountability piece and who's monitoring, who's holding those houses accountable. I think that becomes a question of concern for us as a city, because that's the piece that in this process, minus the sex offenders, that was the piece that we didn't get the clear answer that we were looking for, because they're a private contractor or they're contract on state, even though they fall under the same rules as Cora for any other state agency. I think that was a disconnect. And as it moves from this to the Ohio Recovery House, the question really becomes, I think, is what is BHA doing to address this. So as we have at least another recovery house in the pipeline, is it two, that are in the pipeline that we're working through, like the change of use, because we're going from the IRC, which is a residential code, to the IBC, and we're having the staff to turn on a dime because of some of the legislative changes, is how do we now manage these things, because they're now in a zoning area that they weren't allowed before.
Is
And
that
so,
because of the timeline with which they change from like suddenly they're a recovery resident? Is that what you mean, or what is creating that like turning on a dime that quick timeline?
because we did not allow them previously in residential areas, so family residential areas. And because that house was traditionally built and monitored under the international recovery, like just the residential code, now all of a sudden, because it's being used for something different, the change of use is changing. We now have to look into the IBC. And so city staff is having to figure out that process where we've not had that challenge in the past because they weren't allowed in residential areas. So I really think, and again, Councilmember Chris can correct me, I think the real question becomes is we've taken the steps needed that council feels necessary to address the sex offender issue. The question is going into next legislative session is what are we doing with EHA to truly understand the accountability piece, or how they're certifying, how they're not? Because when we get into the questions of the primary diagnosis of an individual's substance abuse treatment, and that's the reason that they're there, the question becomes is who's verifying that? And then
Well, no, I mean it's so complicated because when you get into the IRC or the IBC, there's questions of how do you regulate it from a life safety perspective. And typically you go, are they ambulatory, are they not ambulatory? Are they disabled, are they not disabled? And really what you have to do is you have to, from a fire code perspective, actually regulate it potentially to the highest level, because you don't know who's going to be in there. And you don't know what's going on. And I think that's what Zach is saying, is that's what broke the system.
Okay.
And so, I mean, we see the shell who just retired. You hear the stories. Fire codes are for reasons, because somebody's died.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, do they have the right alarm system? All of these things we need to know and make sure that they're in place. And if something happens, what happens when or if they don't have those things? And now we're dealing with a real tragedy because we didn't have the right protective measures in place and people got trapped in the basement or these other pieces. And I think that's a big piece of it, and it's the loopholes that broke it.
And just to put a finer point on what Zach was saying, it's not so much that it wasn't clear, it was also that BHA said it kind of responded to all of us, to both of you, with inaccurate information, with an inaccurate timeline, with a lack of understanding of, in theory, their own process of how they were supposed to certify this, when things were certified, who was living there when. And so it just doesn't lend itself to any credibility when this whole process in theory should have been set up. The whole premise of these group homes and these recovery residences is to genuinely rebuild trust in the people that lost it, right? With the community, and to be a good neighbor. And the whole process is in theory set up with all of these good neighbor guidelines, and the company that was involved in this had these good neighbor guidelines, and it seems like none of those were followed. And so the confusion, the mismanagement, the lack of accountability, and I'm not putting this on you guys, because you've gotten you've kind of brought out some of this information in itself of who knew what when and who said what about what process. We have the Mabara Solutions misrepresenting its certification on March 6th. We have CAR then saying it was certified on March 25th. We have BHA then saying it was not certified on March 31st and April 1st, the April Fool's Day. Then the BHA said it was certified through CAR, and then it was also certified as a home under SOMB, which is not even a thing that they can do. And then
that part was our misunderstanding. That particular part
that
was
piece
our
there?
misunderstanding,
Okay,
because
BHA.
before
It was
May,
we met with them.
yeah,
They shared information. we had a,
Okay, that was just
so
an
we
agency.
walked
So-
away.
We
sorry.
misinterpreted because was not our,
Because there are a lot of
Yeah.
agencies here. This is a large agency.
Well,
so
plus
no
we
problem.
were
Yeah.
just almost like brand new to that
That's
field.
totally fine. Thank you for
So
correcting.
that, I can take full responsibility
Okay.
for that.
Sure, but then we still have BHA saying, I think in response to you all and the July 12th event that you all helped organize, that it was not operating before March 29th, and that they didn't have residents living there. And we know that because of the sex offender registry that Zach put together, that we know they were living there as early as January 12th, and as late as and moved in as late as February 12th or something, 21st.
And yeah, and before that really came to us. So
Yeah.
they were all living there.
Right.
And
Yeah,
we like our
and I-
processes, okay? We
No,
just,
I-
if we
totally
don't have our
understand.
processes, we cannot function.
Totally understand. Well, and I think some of this too is what's bad bureaucracy versus corrupt bureaucracy, right? And kind of pulling that out of what where things getting caught up versus intentionally misrepresented or misled.
I don't think there was malintent, to be clear. I think there, when we talk about was the law interpreted as it was,
Yeah.
I think it just, their process wasn't followed as is plainly written. And they have a process that says there's a cease and desist letter that is issued to an entity if it's operating without certification.
Yeah.
That's like the current law.
Yes, and I think what we're trying to kind of parse through with them, with other agencies that we have involved, right, is what qualifies exactly as operating, right? Was it marketing itself as a recovery residence? Was it right? And what is that trigger and when? Is it when somebody applies for it and says, hey, I'm operating this? Is it when people move in, right? And those are questions
Sure.
that we have remaining out to BHA, as well as to the
Yeah.
related
I mean, either way, they said the house didn't have anyone living there at the time of certification, right? Or before certification. So, like,
And everybody-
regardless of the operational status and when it's, when is it a duck versus a chicken, like, that they still didn't have that clean, right? And so I guess maybe can I offer a question to both of you to either ask like the Attorney General's office or for the accountability hearings, and I'd offer this: why should we as a city and community trust that the certifications and programs are safe, verifiable, and effective when agencies can't even get their facts straight? I'm not assuming malintent here, but there's a certification process for a reason, and it's to protect all of the very things that we've been talking about, and the people who are moving in who want to rebuild that trust, and in theory the operators of that home and the community at large. And so, like, where does that get held to the process that is already in existence? So
I'd be happy to ask that question in
Yeah.
the Smart Act hearings. I also think that, I'm happy to ask it now too. You all are on those chains with BHA. I would also ask, do you want to put that question into BHA and help us continue this conversation, right? Because I think part of what I have struggled with is a long chain of telephone, right? Of trying to
Yes.
keep everything, being inundated, and then trying to keep everything straight, trying to make sure all of the questions are being addressed, which is why we're not leaving the conversation as I led with, right? Because we know that there's going to be further questions, further clarifications, and questions that maybe they missed. So I would just say, I'm happy to put that in. Also, do you want to chime in and ask them that question, and we can help hold them accountable to the representation that you're giving to the local constituents.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to chime in, or we can
Yeah,
tag
if
team.
I can tag team
Yeah.
on that. It's,
Absolutely.
we understand your frustration because we've had it too. The thing is, you have more control and authority over these agencies than we do. We have tried.
Oh, over BHA, yes.
Yes, we have
Yeah.
tried to get
Yeah. And,
responses from
I-
them to no avail, but
Oh, and we
because
know
you
why.
are basically their bosses,
Yes.
to
Well-
some degree, you have to find out which agency has enforcement.
Yeah.
But you
And
are
we
the
are
keepers of the law.
We
So
are so here for you, and that's why that's why we keep showing up and keep answering and keep asking.
Yeah.
And so I think we don't have to wait for the SMART hearing. I mean, this is
Because that's
This-
January 2.
Yeah.
this
January 5th.
this lack of this inability to communicate clearly has led to a whole
Yes.
lot of this. So
Right.
I understand that. Yeah, you don't have any reason to trust at this point. So is there a way to start to rebuild that somehow? Is how we need to really continue this. So yeah, no, I would say at this point in time, I get it.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And it has been a lot of my in writing and direct feedback
Yeah,
to
and thank you.
BHA
I mean, you
is
guys
that
brought us bring a lot of this forward.
right, right.
At the city level. So,
Yes, and we understand.
Yeah.
You know, we all are elected. A lot of us are elected representatives, right? Coming from this and understanding that a big part of this is just being responsive to folks and saying, "Hey, I'm working on this." And the fact that the city faced that, faced a lack of that the constituents did, right? I had to make calls to get the core requests closed out, right? That I had to do that, right?
Thank
So,
you.
Of
And
course,
see how
happy to
you
do
have
it,
more
and that's
sway
the
than-
oversight that we can provide.
Yes.
If we're talking about where we're bosses of this agency, this is where we are, right? It's somewhat limited to this. Happy to help continue those conversations, get the things we need, advocate on y'all's behalf, and either throw in those questions ourselves or help uplift them from.
I'll offer wherever you think it will be most productively directed.
I think we're gonna need a whole half day to get
Yes.
Woog up to date.
Yeah.
We look forward to all the
Aren't you glad you showed
I'm
up this
listening.
evening?
I voted on local control a lot for you guys, so just
We
I'm here for
appreciate
it.
that.
I'm here for it. Seriously.
Yeah.
can fill you.
But I do need to get the little one.
We can
And-
fill you.
And thank you. I apologize. I have 2 kids at home that need to be fed, so I need to leave. But I will follow up, and I'm gonna definitely get caught up on all this. I mean, I
You
definitely.
didn't leave them a microwavable meal?
They don't have meals. They just came from mom's. I don't shops.
Would you like to take some food?
Take some food.
That's kind of like shake up,
Shake it.
yeah. So.
I'll take. But anyway, I will follow up and thank you guys, and I will be at some meetings too. So
Okay.
it's good to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And I do want to just acknowledge Representative Gordon, Senator Wallace, and their assistance in this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They have been
Yeah.
very responsive, even as of today. I was on the phone with Senator Wallace, clarified in an email.
Yeah.
It wasn't for me, but
Yeah.
I am grateful for both of them. They have been very responsive to staff to help us try to get answers and work through this. So I look forward to having additional conversations with them through this year and then through next legislative session as different things come up. So again, thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank
Your
you.
partnership.
I appreciate you too.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. I've been quiet, but because they say a lot
Yeah.
that I don't need to say. That the only thing that I really want to emphasize is the reason why we're so passionate about this. The reason why our community is so passionate about this is we are trying to prevent the oh my goodness, this has happened. And whatever we need to do to be consistent, to have preventatives and protect our community, that's what we need to do. I know I don't want it to come back on our community to say, oh, well, you didn't follow this, you didn't follow that. And here we are pulling all of it. Yes, we did. You told us this, you told us that. And so we want to make sure that everything is correct to where we have followed all the guidelines, have done everything we needed to do so that our community can be protected the best way possible. And I know you all want the same thing. So that's all I have to say. So thank you for all that you have done. I know we've been in those email feeds, and you all have been on it. So I want to say from me to you, both of you, thank you so much. And I know at first it was kind of like over the top, like, okay, what are they talking about? And I know it was a lot of confusion because it was confusion for us.
Yeah.
And so thank you for just pulling the needles out of the haystack and trying to find it and find some resolve. And that means a lot because that means that we have someone that we can look up to and call that is responsive to us, to our needs, our questions, and our suggestions and our comments. So that means
Looking
a lot.
for
So thank you.
solutions. I appreciate, looking for solutions.
Well, I think we've learned a lot and we're not done learning, so.
We have all learned a lot. That's
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, you had said something, one of you had said something about, having those conversations with BHA to ensure that the law is interpreted as it was intended to be. So we need to make sure that we're kind of all looking at this through the same lens. So I'm wondering, and thank you for the timeline too, because
Oh my gosh.
to go scroll back and forth.
Amazing.
And so I'm looking at, okay, well, where, it kind of veers off in this direction because it could, the law could have been interpreted a certain way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
And so making sure that we are all looking at this through the same lens, that BHA is looking at this through the same lens. And the other one is having definite, or, having finite definitions for mental health transitional, sober living. What do all these what do they mean? And that we're all looking at it and having the same understanding of the terminology. So
And
that
that's
there
part
isn't
of-
misconception.
That's part of the conversation
Yeah.
to have with CML.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's terminology for the sake of clarifying what the certification and what the program is actually for.
For, yes,
And
exactly.
to ensure that what the state is regulating is for the right purpose, what we are regulating is for the right purpose, and that
And
is,
you're right.
there's no gray area there.
Yes,
These are
yes.
very challenging issues to manage
Yes.
from a public health standpoint in general, like in different ways, and you should take
Yeah.
different strategies for
Yeah.
different solutions. So I was kind of the thank you across the board. In case you're wondering, the papers, this is the timeline.
So I was just looking at it on
Yeah.
there. I just have to make it really big.
I'm old fashioned. I like the hard copies.
Yeah, just the time I do. Okay, so any other comments, questions? Okay, so we are ready, and I've kind of sparsed out 40. So, looking at the mental health funding and Boulder County proposed sales tax.
So Mayor Peck asked to put this on there, even though she was going to be out of town today. She said, "I'm sure you guys will have a great, robust conversation about it."
Without the commissioners here.
Without the
Yes.
commissioners
Well,
here. And I think her thought was, I think she has concerns about the proposal. Staff has concerns about the proposal. I know they pushed it off a week to try to gather some more comments, which we appreciated. I think she was just curious your thoughts on the proposal. And the idea is that they would like to levy a sales tax for mental health assistance, but it's not very clear what that means. And so I think she was curious your thoughts. I mean, I think obviously the budget creates all kinds of issues when it comes around funding for mental health. And I think from a staff perspective, there are some things that we think could happen that would really help a lot of folks. I mean, I think we have some thoughts around that. Christina has more thoughts than I do. But I think her question was just, what is your general thought about the proposal, if you're familiar with it, and your thoughts about mental health?
So on a high level, yes, I'm familiar, and my questions to Commissioner Levy through an email were concerned with kind of the backstory to how this came about, like how did they come up with this number? Where would the oversight on the funding be? Is this truly gonna meet the need going forward? Because once we ask the voters, it's hard to keep asking them if we haven't hit the right number. She shared back with me, and then I don't know how many of you know Kathy Partridge here in town, who has been, I had a long conversation with her yesterday about some of the backstory that goes back to, I think, 2017 or before, where there was a working group or I forget what they call it.
Supporting Action for Mental Health.
Supporting Action for Mental
Thank
Health,
you.
which was a result of a murder, suicide, and the woman who was pregnant
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
Craigslist. So
Yes.
that
Yes,
was kind
yes.
of a result of community conversations that came out of that, and then
Thank
supporting mental health was kind of created.
Great.
through that.
Well,
That's a local, I mean, it was
It was a local.
Yes.
yeah, it was Boulder County, right? Or
No, it was
No,
the
it's
city
here.
of
The city of
Longmont.
Longmont.
Yeah.
Okay.
All this happened in a period of about a week and a half
Yeah, not even that
Wow.
long.
Well,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
started it.
that started it.
Yeah.
The other one too, Christina, did the one on North Main that was also very close to that.
Yes.
Both of those triggered.
Yes.
Several situations that
Yeah.
clearly
Three
indicated the
situations.
need
Yeah.
for assistance with
Yes.
mental health
Okay.
in the community.
And it
So I
was
think that's what
Julie
she's
who
talking
read that, who read that? Julie, yes, I can't remember her last name, her last name. Yeah,
Well-
she looped me in on that one too, so.
So
We
great
did
work from all the people involved with that. It was good to learn about that. I honestly didn't know that good work had been happening, and that identifying the needs and kind of where in the community, whether organizations, nonprofits could start to kind of address those needs. And then we were able to direct a good deal of ARPA funding, I guess, that came in during the pandemic through the county to really help get some of those programs going. And step in if I'm missing some key parts, because this is just after my conversation with Kathy yesterday. And the concern and the need for putting this on the ballot now, and what my question to Commissioner Levy was, are we simply filling the hole of the ARPA funds that are now going to be gone, that some of these agencies and organizations have started some really great programs in community to address many of the needs that you all identified, and that we don't want those to fall off now that they're really getting going? Or is this number that they came up with to not only do that to fill a hole, but also to look for growth in the future for future needs and how that will be spent? And so, at first I was really hesitant about how this came about and the why, and also the transparency of where is it going exactly and how much good is it doing? Do we have some, again, measurable, accountable data on how many people in Boulder County are we currently helping? What is the gap that we're trying to fill? And of course, I talk a lot with my good friend Senator Judy Amabile, who has come out hot against it. So I was hearing her input too about we're missing a piece for those that really have more severe problems, and bringing in the discussion about, and I'm not 100% sure about what Larimer County has done with their fee or their tax that they put over, and they have a facility, and that was Senator Amabile's point that we have an opportunity, if we're going to the voters to ask for a tax increase, why not go for the reach for the stars while we have the chance and outline the why. So after speaking with Kathy yesterday and hearing from Senator Amabile last week, that the discussion at the commissioners, I think they ran out of time to vote. It wasn't that they were going to wait for more input, that they ran out of time because they allowed so much input. There was a proposal to potentially consider a time frame for this tax, and to have the opportunity. I think they threw out 3 years, but I kind of agree that 3 years is really not a lot of time to have a good look back, to allow the citizens that potentially may vote this through a chance to have that input. Is it working? How much is it working? Do we need to renew this, increase it? I think whenever you give the voters another chance at something down the road at some point, it's always a better sell. And also it gives those kind of in the works the ability to understand what might have been missing. So I'm a little more swayed to potentially support this going forward with a date, a sunset in mind, so that we could have the voters revisit it. And I know that funding will, agencies and organizations will depend on that. So of course they're going to want to keep it going, and that's a hard thing. But we were told even with the ARPA funds to consider it one-time dollars, people. This is one-time dollars at the state level. It should have been one-time dollars at the county level.
It
and of
was
course
one-time dollars
nobody
at the city
did that.
level.
Yeah.
So I know that's a long-winded way of saying that I'm still listening. And still willing to consider the positives that may come out of this, and but I do like a sunset. I think it's an opportunity for us to revisit, and I am concerned about the things that Senator Amabile brought up. Kathy said that our community, our county may not have the population of high acuity needs of people to, and I don't know, in comparison with Larimer County,
Yeah.
like their facility compared with, like, I said, well, that's a good question. You know, would our county be able to have enough?
Because
people?
where do those numbers come from? Like,
I don't
where
know.
did she get that
Like I was,
assertion?
who, Kathy?
Kathy, that
Well, I
we
would
don't
want to
have-
check with Larimer County, like,
Yeah.
there's a county right next door that has been through this, they've gotta have data that drove them to have a
Yes.
tax that did what they did,
Yes.
so.
And then wondering, you know, the number of people who are undiagnosed because they don't go
Mhm.
to the doctor, or they
Mhm.
because they can't even access mental health care.
Right,
So they're just kind of out there, you know.
so yeah, so how is it
And
working?
I know this from personal
I know you
experience.
do, and that's, so does Judy, and so
Yeah.
how is it, how did it come about in Larimer County, and how
Yes.
is it working? And did they ask for enough?
Yeah, I'm gonna
When
talk
they-
to Jody.
when they
She's
asked.
a line, so.
So, and I didn't get answers from Commissioner Levy
Okay.
or Kathy on those questions.
This might be my ignorance on the proposal, but has this ever been attempted before in Boulder County or no?
This particular tax?
Yeah.
No, but it's been talked about for years because there was a push to do what Larimer County did, some.
At least not in the last 30 years.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
thank you for that. There's some history.
Is that around a lodging tax in particular for mental health, or just a lodging tax generally in the last 30 years?
Specifically for mental health.
Got it.
Mental
Okay.
health.
Okay. Thank you.
And the current proposal is for it to be perpetuity?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of, it feels unclear, I think, from.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at the language.
What it's supposed to
Right.
go for, will cities have some opportunity to tap into those?
Yes.
yeah,
You
how
know,
would you
what about-
qualify? Yeah.
What about wraparound services and housing, because that's been cut, and so is there some we carve out that could be for people who are in supportive housing?
Yes.
Well, I think it's, you know, so I'm on the Boulder County Opioid Council. And so what we're finding in that at this point is, how are you evaluating duplication of services?
Mhm.
Because we're constantly
Right.
seeing duplication of services. And,
Right.
you know, how does that play into, you know, some of us have the Lead and Core programs, which we did actually came out of the mental health work, and when we created that, but so how do you reconcile that with other groups? And you know, we're struggling with it on that group, on the opioid side, going, how do you measure it? How do you measure the outcomes?
Yes.
And I think that's,
So I kept asking that same question.
Good
How do we
clarity,
know
right.
what you started with the ARPA funds, what it's doing and how well it's working? And I just got, well, they're too new and they're just.
well, frankly, there's a bigger problem underlying this because, you know, today we're talking about mental health. When you look at health and human service funding generally, I mean, the county has cut a large
Right.
amount.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Boulder County Health, I think, had to cut 20% of their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Our health and human service funding is all being stretched because of the budget issues we're dealing with. And I think underlying all of that is we have more nonprofits being created.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we have more nonprofits that didn't request public funds that are now requesting public funds.
Mm-hmm.
And we have more nonprofits coming in, and so the pie is just continuing to shrink. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
how are you defining what you want? How are you
Yeah.
going to measure your outcomes?
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think all of that has to come into play.
And I think the other piece to that is that we can more easily measure the intervention piece of things. So how do we keep people from, cycling up to hospitalization, and what kind of supports that we can put in? That's easy data to really measure. I think the other piece of that, which we saw with the opioid funds, that is also really key in this area, are the prevention efforts. So that's so tackling it from different prevention, intervention. I think looking at that whole continuum of services is ultimately going to have an impact. And so to your point, 3 years isn't going to show us that. You know, I'd argue that 10 years might not even show us
Right.
that. And so being really clear on what the dollars are going to be used for, what it is that will be measured, and adding that piece of the duplication of services is huge.
It is key, and the language that is presented to the voters doesn't go into all of those
Yeah, I
important
have, yes.
pieces, and that's frustrating. And which is also what I said to the commissioners: it's that you're not doing a very good job of selling what you
Yeah.
want, and you know, I used the term and I got chastised for it, but I said it feels like we're asking for funds and then it's going to be spread around like peanut butter, and I don't know,
Yeah.
like, are we really going to have an impact? Did you use the peanut butter thing too?
Yes.
Okay. And I, you know, is that going to have enough of an impact of what we're trying to do to help people? So, are they going to take the food away? Because I want to
You know,
get it.
the-
I know, that's what.
There's a gentleman.
I'm
that
going to
was-
get it just to go.
Yeah, outside. We could, if we wanted to, Mayor Pro Tem, if you just wanted to take a time out, I would
Yeah,
love
we
for.
can take a break.
Could everybody just take a plate to take home?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Take
Don't
a
have
less.
to break.
Yeah, don't have less to take with him. And that would make me feel really great if everybody took a plate. There's plastic wrap at the end, so take a couple of plates worth and you can wrap it right up. Christine's got that on us. He's ready to clean.
No.
Yeah. She wanted
Oh,
to see.
gosh. So thankfully,
Everyone take it for a walk.
Yeah, my gosh.
He said he could wait, so I think he will. I'm just saying, everybody go get a plate. Come on, get a plate to take home. Yes. Everybody would be great. 15 desserts. It's fine.
Is the dessert any good?
It's okay. Yeah, right. There's no chocolate in it.
Yeah, that's probably
Valerie, Monday.
Where is it at?
I haven't tried it yet. I've already got it attached.
Oh, I don't know. I think it fell off.
No, not scheduled.
Yeah, it's just like
It's there's plastic wrap. Not quite, you know, but switch to get 5 minutes. You do, and everybody gets their food. Yes, but we have there's plastic wrap at the end.
I'll get it on my ears, like, what do you do? Swamp sauce and everything thing.
Not tease.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Is it? Yeah, the slider.
Dave, I appreciate all your input, and you really
Where
just
there's a
do.
knife on this thing. Oh, there you go.
Pulling off of everything I know.
Yes, thank you.
Right up front.
Yes, fine. Next time. I like that. Nice meeting. Anytime we get something over 2 pages, whatever it is. Whatever, no matter what. Yes.
It's like I.
Chocolate.
I know, I'm like, I'm dipping, you didn't get a walk today. I do good. Yes. It was so
It was super nice. It was coming burning on top and shooting. And then I was like, oh, this is Valerie loves cooking. First one.
Oh, it is.
Okay, yes. Okay.
I got my.
No, just jump in.
Then the fifth grader, they just, you know, they come like they old stuff. Oh, yes. Don't you forget. Go high and then.
One of my favorites is there's certain things.
Oh my God.
My finance. I think so. Because I guess I guess the one I actually done, it's highly redundant.
That's fine, nobody's supposed to, as long as cameras.
Identification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just didn't have it to see it, so we the thing I'm doing is it's probably the one slide where we have it for text, one thing because of the
So all my
Food.
So long as the session is fine. So just be the, you know, like, ever in our favor. And, yeah.
How do you like to get in there?
This is my preppy weight company. And so and it had special.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's trying to just
You're still in the bag?
I did that. Yeah. So now when I take it to the drive.
Perfect. I usually go to one of them on the airport. I know there's good, so yeah. I just wanted to say something. Right. But it's a yeah, let's hear that. We'll get to special. It can't last forever. Knock on wood. I feel like I say that.
I know.
That's the parties.
Take me back to the 80s.
What?
On all things like other than services. Perfect. Yeah. That's my place.
Yes, when you're this is kind of like, nope, that's just stay there.
Get out there.
Oh, that's funny.
Hunter said the same thing.
Oh.
Hunter said the same thing. Let me go early that day. Already scheduled. He wanted to wait. It's just time for us to see it.
I haven't got yeah, Maddie, I feel like it's a big deal with both of our last years. They've done the fuel station. Yeah, you know, that's a huge deal.
Together.
Yeah, so, Maddie worked for
It's just a weird connection. Well, it's not weird.
But yeah.
And I ran for Congress.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Finance director. Somehow I needed an assistant finance director.
Okay.
And my finance director and assistant finance director lived in my house.
Where's Maddie?
Yes.
What kind of pets are they?
This is he's super short, like splay footed legs like this, but he's really long. So he's like, yes, his shoulders.
That sounds like a back.
Oh, you're off. I'm standing.
Maddie.
We can play the
Yeah. Working this class at Joseph's.
Okay.
See, so we both moved from Colorado. She was from Karen's house to DC. I moved from my house to DC, and then started in the house.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Maddie was just back.
So,
Don't make me do it with Alliance.
You did.
Came by my house, met my dog. I've met her dog a few times, but
So funny. My niece is good.
he's a little wet.
These two, they got them with Whole Foods. For my mom's birthday. My mom, she's like,
He just turned 2 and
like, it's so cute. And then these.
So he got these little so my vet was like, "What's my name?" So and she like whispers, like you.
Do we need more? Did we run out of saran wrap?
No, chicken. I tried to make
I did the same.
I was feeling guilty about it. Yeah. But I have heard that 2 months old free after they did play fitness. So I'm trying
Well, just because there's flavors that they get by nails.
I see. Okay. So I'm not like making it worse. It's just like take the brand.
Yes, yes.
So you have them still living.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also like,
You're not gonna make it.
okay.
You can't.
He also looks, he's pretty dang slick.
Yeah, okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Come on back, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes. Okay, we're reconvening. I think we left off with, just, defining outcomes. So it was your, I think you were the one who last spoke, right? With the-
I have a question.
Ensuring no duplication of services. Yeah, just trying to, get my mind back.
Has there been opportunity for you to weigh in with the commissioners? How is that going?
I think it's gone well. I've been on a couple of calls with Commissioner Levy and just talked about the same opinion that we need to be really clear on how the funds would be spent, and that what the approaches that may work in Boulder County or Erie or other municipalities may not necessarily work for Longmont, and so we need to not have a one-size-fit-all approach, but really have it be specific to the municipality, because we have different service levels and different programs that have already been implemented. So it was another piece that I shared.
Did they have a suggestion or a way that they've already thought of to supply that kind of that transparency in how the funds are going to be spent now, or they want to just figure that out later?
That was a recommendation that I made, and I think that we still have the opportunity to continue to ask for that in the ballot language itself.
Isn't there a deadline for that ballot language to be finalized? So that's coming up pretty
I
quickly.
think it's coming up pretty quickly.
So so you're still hopeful that you can get
I'm
some
hopeful.
language?
Hopeful. Doesn't
Do you have suggested language that you want to have added?
I don't specifically, but I think that we've learned a lot from other taxes that have been passed. That what I would say is really back to that municipality specific plan, and so not a one size fit all approach, but really what works for each community.
Okay.
There's a way to include that.
I think Christina's being
Okay.
very delicate.
Let's hear it, Harold.
So I think, in reality, it's kind of what we went through on the affordable housing tax and attainable housing tax, where, you had supportive services and you had other issues, but then, we were talking about, and it's good to have the affordable housing funding, but you also need supportive services dollars, but that ended up staying completely within the county system to backfill
But yeah, it was used to backfill.
some of the gaps. And so when you went through Zinnia, one of the most important pieces to building permanent supportive housing is actually having supportive dollars. And I think, good job being really
And
impactful.
I will say though that Commissioner Levy did call that out in one of our first meetings to say we cannot have a repeat of the affordable and attainable housing tax in the way that was rolled out.
And I had made those comments to her
Uh-huh.
too, because what it ends up doing, if you're not clear on how you're gonna allocate it, it turns into the Hunger Games amongst the municipalities.
Oh yeah.
And these issues, and it got pretty rough at times in terms of the housing dollars. So I think that's what we're saying, is you need to be very clear on what you want to do, what the outcomes you're looking for, and how different municipalities can take their specific situations into account, because our problems are distinctly different than Boulder, although the magnitude of the problems look the same. There are differences behind it, and we can pretty clearly say that in almost everything. You can't look at Boulder and say that's what Longmont is. It may look like it, but what's behind it is completely different.
So do you think you're gonna get what you need from them in assurances or language for you to be able to, as a council, support this or not support it? I'm just wondering where you're going with, okay, so you all, where are you going with this? Because the citizens of Longmont are gonna wanna know what you think.
Well,
Because you're the kind of the end user of these funds potentially.
Well, and my concern is this all gonna end up being paying in for administrative costs and oversight, where we're not actually using those dollars to produce any meaningful action? That is my big red light that I'm like, I
And
will
those are
not support
issues that
this.
we
Yeah.
brought up.
Okay. And did you get a response?
It was to Commissioner Levy, and she, and I continue to say that in our group of, our executive group. And so she does realize that there were some issues with that and called it out.
Okay.
And this is the most robust conversation we've had on this topic as a
Really?
Oh, okay. For mental health or just
group.
On this tax?
Yeah, this
the
this just kind of popped up in
This
the
just-
mayor.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
it's
it's
kind
good.
of-
The mayor.
that's what I'm saying. I don't
Yeah.
we're just figuring out some of these details.
Yeah,
and how we
yes.
each feel about it a little bit right now.
Oh, great.
There's been no direction to bring any particular information. It was just something the mayor wanted for us to chat about, so.
So no
So thank you for
staff,
motivating us.
oh yeah, so has staff from the county come to give you
Not
a?
presented. Are they planning to come to present to us?
I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay.
I mean,
They have,
since they do.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to vote to put it on the ballot first.
Okay,
Before
and
they
then
come and ask us for
for
support.
support.
Ask you for support.
And we haven't had a
It's just a little
presentation
late
briefing.
for our-
okay.
No.
There's still too many unknowns.
There's
Or
a
all
great deal of
unanswered questions.
I would think that they want your
It's probably
input
the last
before they vote to put it on the ballot. Is
It's
what I think
so.
it's hard.
It's,
How
it's basically the largest city in Boulder County.
Yeah.
Not after the fact.
Not after the fact. So, and the other piece, as I'm looking at the ballot language, and it might have been refined since this email came out, but it talked about mental health prevention and early intervention services, crisis response and intervention services that do not involve law enforcement. So then that brings me back to what our work with the Corps and our leads team. Okay, and then I think about being a person of lived experience and having what happens when you call your mental health provider and they're off hours. If this is a mental health emergency, call 911. When you call 911, who comes to the door? It's law enforcement. And so what are the impacts going to be by having this here? And does it then undermine the work that communities like ours are already doing with the Corps, with our Corps and Leads team, and getting public safety, trained for crisis intervention? So I just, so some of these things, and we've had 14 come out to homes, And it is a very different experience than it was when my daughter was going through her mental health crisis prior to the initiation of core and leads. This was back in 2013, 2012, and police would come out. Those interactions are night and day, and for the better. So I would really challenge, so we're putting this out, but do they understand the nuances of our communities? And we have services that are working, and we're looking to refine them and make them stronger. Would something like this just get in the way?
Well, I think that speaks back to the nuances of each community. And so a response, up until probably the last, 5 years, 6 years, I live in Erie, there hasn't been as robust of a program there, where Longmont has been doing this for, since 2016. Since 2016, we're almost going on 10 years. And so you look at a community that has developed that over the 10 years, where you have, a community like Erie that Boulder County actually hires their co-responders to work with the Erie Police Department. There's some real differences there. And so I think if it speaks to a community response for the unique municipality, then that offers up the opportunity to really do what fits within the community.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like potentially eliminating that part of the language will help just keep the options open.
Yeah.
And that needs to be done before they vote on it.
Yeah.
Which is
They'll
like
reach out to her.
now.
Yeah.
This week.
Yes.
Because again, you want to keep those individual municipality options open. And that might shut a door.
Yes. That's what I'm worried as I read some of the language and what could be implied,
Right.
if this is included.
Well, one of the things talking about that makes me think about every time we would go to the National Legal Congressional Conference or City Summit, where I always want to look and see what funding we could get. I mean, this was before. But a lot of times we wouldn't qualify because most of the time are ahead of everyone else.
Yes.
And so where do we sit with that for the funding for this? If we're already doing the work, you know what I'm saying? And we are already ahead, and we're not taking that language out because we already have a program that's working well. Can we, how would that be distributed amongst the municipalities? And that's the thing. If we've already started the work and doing quite well, no.
There's currently no split in the wording. There's no split for municipalities.
And
Currently.
But that's my fear. Like, they're not stating how much.
So then they could decide, well, Erie's not doing enough. So here, you take all this pot of money, and then we have a large group of residents that are paying into this fund. And and I hate to be that person of like, well, mine, kind of attitude. But if we're putting a large portion into this tax, we should be able to access it as well to enhance what we already have.
Without restrictions.
Penalize
Without restrictions. So like a few years ago when they started their co-responder program, they talked to us. I think you and I were in the conversation about if we wanted to partner, and there were some pretty hard lines where we were just like, you know what? So Boulder and Longmont basically said, you know what? We're ahead. And we're not going to do this because there were some, I think, core operational disagreements. Like the co-responders would go without police. And we were like, that is incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
To go without a police officer with you, because we have seen, people in crisis.
Yes.
That if you don't have law enforcement there, that there is a high probability that it can go south in a hurry. And so, Boulder and Longmont both said, you know what, we're where we are, we're not gonna do this. And so the restriction piece is real, because why would we change a program that we know works really well? And frankly, we've learned it on our own. We started with a different co-responder program. The data said it wasn't working. We unfunded it and then shifted to what we have now. And so those are the nuances. Are you going to put restrictions? Are you going to do this? That
The other thing that I would add is that as a city, we've really built that continuum of services where we have the core clinicians, which is our highest level of clinicians, down to clinician one positions that really look at more of the kind of basic counseling and resource dissemination. And so we have the ability, when a core clinician goes out to do the assessment, do they need a higher level of care, or do I need to refer them back to children, youth, and families, to senior services, to housing and community wellness, to get those resources? And so within our system, we have built that out, where other organizations may not have that, and we shouldn't be penalized for that.
Right.
well, we're
we
getting
should-
ready to make another leap, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. We shouldn't
Right.
not be able to qualify for
Well,
funding.
how
Well,
much
should we have to pay for others to catch up to us?
Yeah.
Or is it better to, further bolster what we're doing so that others can more easily follow?
Right. How we can potentially help just amplify that voice of you all if you can, like this week.
I think they might be voting on it tomorrow. I just met with the county.
I think that's right.
Oh, yeah.
So
it-
started to
So we need to go
prepare.
home.
We'd
No,
started
I'm
to
gonna
prepare
start
some
my
information.
When I get home.
Yeah, we'd started to prepare some information, and then they were voting on it that day, and the cutoff was noon. So we're like,
But are
Okay.
they voting on moving it forward, or are they voting on the actual language?
I think they're just moving it. I think they're just
So there might be
forward.
time to
And then
address
to-
the
to-
language.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. Well, in that piece, we can help with, amplifying the important points that you made about the language and making sure that Longmont.
I don't think they're locked into the language
Okay.
because they still need to do polling and
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Very good.
Are they gonna have time for all that before?
It seems very pushed.
I
It
just
seems
does.
very push.
That was part of the pushback too. Is like,
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Well, today's economic climate, pushing something fast that's not well thought out. And,
yeah,
Disastrous.
yeah.
Plus we're
I would be happy to share an opinion from
Yeah.
the council.
Yeah, exactly.
If you
Okay,
decide
well,
to.
it is after 8.
Can I ask for one?
Yes.
I was going to bring it up earlier. So one of the things that we typically see when we're in these tough financial times is the amount of unfunded mandates that we fill is pretty brutal, and cities are going through the same dilemma right now. And so we would just offer ourselves to both of you, is if you think something like that is potentially in legislation, we'll be happy to review it and go over that, because it's a challenge. It's a challenge for us.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think most recently the county cut some child care programs. So our child care provider came to the council asking for funding. You know, it's
Yeah.
that doesn't.
We appreciate that offer, and we're happy to having been experiencing the waterfall
Yeah.
of unfunded mandates from the right, and trying to grapple with
Right.
counties and cities on how we take all of that on.
Yeah.
Here you appreciate that offer.
What's the exact timeline for the special session?
It starts August 21st and it goes
Until
until
we're done.
we are
Oh, there's no finite.
The 3 days is the minimum, but we're not going to be done in 3 days. It takes 3 days to get any bill through if it goes
It
fast.
only takes 3 days to make bill law if you can do it right.
Yes.
I have a feeling the House will be in for longer than, or more extended.
But we have
member-
more people that need to go down to a microphone and say something.
And
So
every
that's
member
why.
can introduce in the fall. Every member can introduce one bill. They just have almost double the number of
Yeah.
members, so more bills to address.
So strategic microphone access.
What?
Strategic microphone access.
Sure.
It tends to attract people that like a microphone.
I will certainly take a look at the bills. Thanks for the advice.
Yes, look at the ones, those are the ones you can see. We don't know about the other ones.
And it goes so fast.
We don't
in
have
my
that.
experience with special sessions. They just go so fast.
We don't have none.
Time.
Black.
Yeah,
use
that.
Okay.
I think it's my third.
Okay,
It's not
well,
special.
I'm gonna go ahead.
A motion to adjourn.
Okay, so, can I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Okay, and
Second.
so, moved by Councilmember Pockett,
Sure.
seconded by, both, Councilmember Kristen. Thank
you all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Dinner.